Hello and welcome to Reach and Reflect, a podcast where we interview guests from both traditional and alternative life paths with the aim of figuring out, for the benefit of our audience, where they find fulfillment and meaning. Salman Hatta has seen a thing or two. The child of two immigrants, he worked his way into Wharton through great diligence and ended up working as a banker before the crash in 2008. Suspecting he was living someone else's life and not his own, Salman decided to seek greener pastures in the Silicon Valley tech world, where he quickly learned that his place was not there either. Salman performed a leap of faith, leaving Silicon Valley to become a digital nomad before joining an organization called OneHeart that focuses on bringing plant healing to what I like to call recovering type A's. As always, we ask our audience to check in with how well this guest resonates with you. Resonance may be a sign that your path or purpose is along the same lines as our guests. Thank you. And if you enjoy this episode, please leave a rating or review. Done. Welcome to the show. This is Reach and Reflect. It's a podcast designed to give people a map of life. We'll be doing so by interviewing people who've achieved a respectable position in a domain of their choosing, and have them kind of tell their stories for us, going through the highs, the lows, really highlighting how they got out of the lows, and then getting deeper into areas that we don't really talk about as, even friends, much less people, which is, where do you find meaning and fulfillment in life? This is a bit of a weird podcast in that we actually have a participatory component where we actually are going to invite our viewers to really pay attention to all of these stories and ask themselves which guest resonates best with me, such that they might find someone that can point them in a direction that they might feel like is worth walking towards. Our guest today is a friend of mine named Salman Hatta. He has had a very intriguing life. I'll do my best to sum it up, and then we'll get into it from your point of view. But, my understanding is you kind of went down the traditional path. You checked all the boxes, went to a good school, good grades, business school, right, at Wharton, which is extremely impressive and takes a lot of work and dedication to get into. And after that, you got into tech. Or maybe there were some jobs before that, but you ended up kind of in tech, and have since gone a completely different direction. So, we'll dive into that in a second. But before we do, I just want to give you some context and set the stage for how I'd like this to go for our viewers. And, if possible, do your best to paint me a picture and dive deep. Again, the goal here is to address questions that, everyone is grappling with, but no one's really talking about.
Sure.
Awesome.
Thanks, Derek.
So, without further ado, could you tell me about your current position in life? What are you doing now?
That's a great question, and one that I continually ask myself. At this moment, I'm exploring a number of different ways to contribute my energy and time to create joy, meaning, and purpose in my life, and joy, meaning, healing, and purpose for other people. So at the moment, I work for an organization called OneHeart Journeys, which is a company that was founded on creating transformational retreats for people like myself and others who consider themselves successful type A types. And these people end up going on week-long retreats to places in Central America, like Costa Rica and Mexico, to find meaning within themselves through the power of different healing modalities, most particularly plant medicine. I work as a Journeys Director, which is a role that encompasses retreat production, coordination, and logistics. And I work with a small team there. It's basically a startup of people who have found success in the corporate world, in the startup world, who founded companies and found meaning through plant medicine, and want to encourage that for others like themselves to be able to dive deep out of their heads and into their hearts. Apart from that, I've been exploring other projects and opportunities. In the past 3 months, I spent quite a bit of time in Bali, Indonesia. This is coming after a period of nearly a year as a nomad, having left my corporate job in San Francisco, and found that Bali resonated the most strongly with me as I'm exploring myself as an artist and a creator and a maker. And so I've been dabbling in fashion design and jewelry design, and now I'm exploring my creativity in music as well. So there are a lot of things formulating in my head. I've given myself the space after so long being stuck in the corporate world to be able to really dive in deep. And my own personality is that of a very curious person. And so I like to dabble, I like to explore. And so what this time I'm intending for it to be for is for me to really try a bunch of different things so that I can dive deep into one or two things that really resonate with me as I continue to live my life with intention and purpose.
That is quite different than the original path you walked on, correct?
That's correct. My original path started out with me, going to college, doing well in school. I went to USC in Los Angeles and studied business, particularly finance. Very traditional corporate path of education. I ended up getting my first job out of school in investment banking. I did 3 years working 80 hours a week. Oof. Doing investment banking, making rich people richer, helping them sell their companies, doing work that was entirely soulless to me, not finding meaning in it, and finding myself pretty miserable. And that started in 2006. In 2009, I found myself out of a job thanks to the financial crisis, which ended up being probably the best thing that could have happened to me. It was such a blessing in disguise. I went on a 2-month backpacking trip to Central America as soon as that happened, and then came back to apply to business schools because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do at the time, and found myself in a position, so fortunately, that I was able to get a job at the very place that I wrote my business school essays about.
Whoa.
Which was the International Finance Corporation, which is the private arm of the World Bank, because I felt that with my finance experience, I wanted to continue that and not drop it completely, but I wanted to do it with purpose and meaning. And I really loved the idea of helping people in developing countries improve their financial position. And so this was international development mixed with finance. I somehow was able to get a job there thanks to a dear friend of mine from high school, and I ended up moving to Washington, D.C. from San Francisco. Spent 2 years there, spent a year abroad in Dubai, living a pretty nice expat life, working in finance. And then I moved on to business school. Did 2 years at the University of Pennsylvania at the Wharton Business School, and thought that I was going to move into either a furthering of the international development world or getting into travel. I ended up doing neither and moved back to San Francisco, working in a very old school tech company, which I didn't really enjoy, and then found myself in the fintech payments world. Spent 4 years there before I realized that there was actually more for me. And that's when I decided to make a pretty drastic change in my life, which I'm navigating through now.
Yeah. That sounds like a total, 90-degree turn to me. So I'd like to, rewind a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and discuss kind of your childhood and really see if we can, trace back whether any of your interests or your current situation like can relate to you as a child. Like maybe we could start with your younger years.
Mm-hmm.
What was your family like? Are there any of your parents' interests that bled into you?
I had a very unique childhood, as I now realize, having had spoken to so many people about their own. But I guess everyone has a very unique experience, so I'm not special in that way. But I grew up an only child to two immigrant parents from Indonesia and Malaysia. I was born in San Francisco, and I ended up being homeschooled from kindergarten through fifth grade. My parents were very religious. I came from a Muslim background, Muslim household. So I grew up with a lot of those values, and they kind of shielded me from the rest of society in some way, in some degree, because they knew what they knew, and they wanted me to uphold the same values and cultural expectations that they had. So I was homeschooled from kindergarten to fifth grade, which meant that I didn't really have a lot of exposure to other children in school, and have and experiences related to just an American upbringing. So I didn't actually play sports or had hobbies. I didn't do any arts and crafts. The traditional Asian expectation is for children to do really well in school and get good grades. And I did that. I read a lot, so I ended up being pretty intelligent, I guess. I worked on that aspect of my personality, but not so much else. And then when I got to high school, which I ended up going to a public high school in San Francisco, I found myself also doing really well in school, but not really having too many interests outside of that or hobbies. So I'd say that the way I have reacted now at 35 years old, wanting to create, wanting to make art, wanting to play music, wanting to do things that are outside of the grain, I guess is a bit of a reaction against that. This is pretty kind of maybe like a late rebellion of sorts. But it's
You're just 21 years late.
It's never too late. It's never too late. I get to explore as late as I want, because honestly, the inner child always resides within us, and it's never too late to bring that out.
Wise words. So I take that to mean that even during college, the same pattern of, not giving into or developing your creative aspects continued.
I had more ambition then. I took a guitar class, for example, but in college, I was more interested in rebelling for social reasons, and because in high school and prior to that, I was quite sheltered from from being able to hang out with friends, or girls, anyone of the opposite sex. In college, I was more interested in developing a social life, because I was actually quite sheltered and nerdy back in high school and prior to that. So my college years were about exploring, traveling, partying to quite a large degree, and not taking the time, which meant I wasn't able to take the time for myself to pursue hobbies or pursuits that are a little more artistic in nature and a little more intentional in nature. One thing to mention is I grew up in a household that wasn't full of abundance, financial abundance. And so when I got to college, my focus was also about finding, doing things that allowed me to have more of that in my life. So that's why I took the business route and studied finance, to allow myself to have a more stable financial life and position to be able to support myself and support my parents.
Interesting. So there seems to be you're indexed very far on like the intellectual side of you, then not indexed very far on the financial abundance end, and then those started rebalancing as you got into your older, well, let's call them middle-ish, younger years, right, in college. Yeah. One thing I'd like to zoom in on for our listeners who might be in similar scenarios is like, did you have any key like aha moments when you realized like, oh, like I really do want to make sure I can support my family, or maybe my social life is lacking. Here's how I'm gonna, or when did you notice that, and when did you decide to make a change?
I don't know that there wasn't actually an aha moment. It all happened gradually and organically. Um, I'll say that the most pivotal moment for me during college was when I decided to study abroad, and that was when I realized that there was more to life. I mean, financial abundance is important. We all want to be able to feel safe and secure, and that we get to have what we want, what do we desire, without feeling any insecurity about it. When I had the opportunity to live abroad and experience life through the eyes of other cultures, that's when I really got to open myself up. When I got to really expand my world horizon, and that was when I decided actually that there is more out there for me than necessarily just making money, or necessarily just rebelling in the way that I felt was something that made me feel good because society expected me to be a certain way, to make money, to be successful in the successful stereotype, that I wanted to do more and experience more in the world.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So the seed was planted around college when you started experiencing other cultures and your value systems, right?
Value systems, cultures, personal experiences,
Hmm.
dabbling with entheogens started then as well, and recognition that the box that society puts us in isn't everything in the world. There's more to it than that. And there's more of a feeling of connection and connectedness that I got to experience, starting with the experiences that I had traveling the world. And I think that formulated a lot of my own personal worldview since then about what I wanted to, how I wanted my life to play out, and why I rebelled so much against that shelteredness that I was exposed to, or I was encouraged to have. Thanks to my parents' limited worldview, it encouraged me to break out and think that, and believe that there's more out there for me to experience and for me to actually create.
And so it sounds like this kind of began, in college. But as you mentioned, after you got out of college, you went into banking and these more traditional, as you say, like kind of type A positions. So what was going on there? Like, what was your mindset when, you had these new experiences? You said, this is the connection I'm seeking, right? And then, you get back from them, and what then?
Yeah. So it was, I had these ideas in my head. So that's very chronologically we'll go. I had my study abroad experience in senior year of college, and then I knew I wanted to travel the world and have kind of a global life. At the same time, I get back and graduate from college and find myself finding a job that was secure and safe, which was the investment banking job. And there was such a discord in my mind, like a cognitive dissonance of me wanting to be abroad and wanting to explore this, the richness of life, and that was contrasted with me sitting in a cubicle for 80 hours a week, feeling trapped, but knowing that what I was doing was setting me up for the ability to have more meaningful experiences in the future. So I struggled with that for a while, I knew at some point I knew that what I was doing wasn't right for me. Like I knew I didn't belong there. Like I knew I had the brains and the intelligence and the hard work ethic to get to that point. And that's where I got, how I got jobs in finance and went to business school. But I knew that there was actually more out there for me to do that didn't necessarily put me in that box. But I think for safety reasons, again, I think probably because of the way I was raised and the way my parents were, there was some inherent trauma around risk risk tolerance that I had, which kept me in those types of roles. Knowing deep down inside of me, that I wanted to do something completely different.
And how did this feeling of knowing you want to do something different begin showing up in your life?
In bits and pieces at first, because I knew there was a level of safety that I still wanted to hold on to. And when I mean safety, I mean financial security. It's kind of like one of those. Financial security is one of those building blocks. I think it's a fundamental need for not everyone, but for me it was. I associated it with my root chakra, in terms of just that is a very vital kind of thing that I felt important to honor myself with. And so I was able to explore these other desires and wishes to be more expressive and be more expressed in different ways. And that's, eventually it was through getting away from the finance world at first. Give up a really good income and security doing banking work, because at the time I knew that was really what was, my peers were doing, because it yielded the most, the most income for them. So I gave that up to do something completely different. And I started moving away, doing things that I felt were more interesting, yet were still kind of solid in terms of the job security and the job types. I moved from finance into tech, into things that I found more interesting to me. So I moved into the travel world. I got a job in a big travel company because I love to travel. So I found little ways to really express myself. And then when I found myself having the ability to kind of take a more meaningful look at my life, and also finding community that were a community of people who also felt the same way as I did, having been in the corporate world for a long time, and then finding that wasn't really resonating with them anymore and didn't want to be in a box. It gave me the confidence and courage to go out on a limb, which led to me starting my journey. So I started my real journey about a year ago, February of 2019, when I quit my job in the corporate world to travel, explore, discover, become a nomad, take part in different retreats and healing activities. I got a yoga teacher training, 200 hour. I did many retreats through OneHeart journeys. I explored what it was like to create through experiences at Burning Man. I learned other ways to to help others. I learned Reiki. So it was just really like a confluence of different things that I felt comfortable doing because I had built up that courage and also that that abundance enough for me to be able to go out and not feel like I needed to be held in that corporate container.
This is really interesting. And so it sounds like there is more of like a gradual build up and a slow move certain directions, right? As you held on to this, like, you know, you use the term root chakra, and I don't know if all of our listeners or viewers will be, are familiar with that term, but the way I like to think about it is it's like your innate sense of security. And it's almost like, if you're familiar with the psychological Maslow hierarchy of needs, it's like, can you eat? Do you have a roof over your head? Like, do you have your basic needs met? And then once that's there, then you can go out and do all the other stuff.
Exactly.
So it sounds like you're balancing that with this like ever growing, like slight discomfort, like I need to go do something different.
Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting that you've had a gradual path, because a lot of, you know, other people who are in that same community have had like a very jarring, like, fucking I'm done type experience. So it's really cool to hear like a different take that still is ending up with you, you know, moving to a very different path. And so it sounds to me like it required not only that build up, but then the support of those around you who are willing to, you know, be like, yeah, you know, make the jump. Right. And so that's really important. You know, I just want to highlight that, you know, maybe life isn't always, you know, for some people, crazy ups and downs, and it might be a more gradual with many little bumps in between, leading you to wherever you need to go.
I think that's fair to say. Everyone's journey is different. My journey was what it was, and looking back on it, it was gradual. I'm portraying it as gradual, but at the same time, there was also a very abrupt jump.
Oh, can we go into that?
Yeah. Well, you know, I feel like I'd have a more robust story of a gradual move away if I actually had more of an intention to move away from what I was doing before into something that I was building. But to be honest, and I think going against the grain of conventional advice and wisdom, which in the traditional corporate world, career advice sense is don't leave your job unless you have something you're going to. And I didn't. I left my job to just give myself the space to go explore and to do. So in that sense, it was quite abrupt. I was making six figures at a fintech startup in the Bay Area, and I said, you know, I am not quite feeling this anymore. I'm not quite feeling the 9 to 5, 9 to 6, 9 to whatever grind of the day to day, and I want to explore something else. And I'm not sure if that's going to be a forever thing, but it's something I want to explore right now. So I decided to make that jump and quit my job. And I didn't have something else to go to. It wasn't like I was building something on the side. I was kind of, but it wasn't that project. It was kind of more of a passion project, and it wasn't actually yielding me anything. And I decided to just make a leap and surrender into the arms of the universe and to see what happened. So this was in February of 2019. Over New Year's, just a month earlier, I had gone on a transformational retreat, my first one with OneHeart Journeys, and that led to me feeling like, okay, I'm going to surrender to the universe. Because part of what I did for that, in preparation for that experience, was to read a book called The Surrender Experiment, authored by Michael Singer, who also wrote The Untethered Soul. And The Surrender Experiment is his biography of... basically his autobiography of him just surrendering and deciding that he wanted to build a meditation center in the woods of Florida and over the course of the next 20 years, so many things just happened to him, invitations and requests that he surrendered to basically all of them. I'm sure a lot happened in between, but ended up becoming the CEO of a publicly traded company. And it's just a fascinating story of what could happen if you just allow things to flow to you and for you and not resist. And so I decided I was going to just be in that state of allowance and surrender and to let things unfold. And unfold they did. I found myself getting invited to become a more like to take a bigger role in these transformational experiences and these retreats. And that's why I've been part of this OneHeart journey for so long until now, and finding myself in beautiful places all over the world, surrendering to invitations from friends to join them. And that's why I continue to find myself flowing at the moment. So I spent 2 months in Bali in October and November. Then I spent a month in Thailand to do a Vipassana retreat. And then
for our viewers who might not know, what's Vipassana?
So just a little pre-context to that, my intention for 2019 was to just discover and explore and learn and to experience different ways of connecting with myself. So plant medicine, particularly ayahuasca, was one big thing. Other types of retreats, another. I did a yoga teacher training, which was powerful. Vipassana had been on my mind for a while because I had friends who raved about the benefits of it. And Vipassana, for those who don't know, is a type of meditation. So there's a Vipassana course. It's a 10-day meditation course. And it's a type of meditation that the Buddha was known to teach to his followers. And it is essentially about sitting for at least an hour at a time and noticing the sensations in the body and feeling these sensations and not having any attachment or aversion to them. So the course teaches anybody who wants to join how to perform that practice and that technique of meditation. And it takes place over 10 days. It's a silent meditation retreat or course. So there's no talking, and it's actually quite strict. There's no talking, there's no writing, there's no reading, there's no exercise. There's nothing one can do outside of meditation, eating 2 meals a day and walking around in complete silence and noticing that everything in the world is impermanent. So there's this concept of anicca, which is impermanence, and it resonated with me because as a long time attendee of Burning Man, one of the 10 principles is impermanence. And this is something I got to experience firsthand by noticing that sensations on my body, whether it be painful or pleasurable, would go away. And so there's no reason to hold any attachment to things that are pleasurable or have any aversion to things that are unpleasurable, because they're going to go away anyway, just like everything in life. And once you can remove any sort of feeling of attachment or aversion, then you remove suffering. So one can be at peace. And I did this Vipassana retreat in Thailand, 6 hours northwest of Bangkok, and it was a pretty powerful experience that I got to allow myself. And again, something that I don't feel like I would have been in the position to do had I been working a normal job. And it's something I got to take away and still practice to this day. I'm not great at it. I don't make a ton of time for it, but it was part of my journey, and it's a continual exploration of how to really live a purposeful, meaningful life that I find is fulfilling me in ways outside of the normal societal make money, buy a car, buy a house type of expectation.
Yeah, and I want to get more into that in a little bit. But before we get too far away from this, I really want to zoom in on like the moment where you decided to quit.
Yeah.
And first go into like, what was your state of mind at the time of quitting? You kind of mentioned like, you're like, this isn't for me, but like, and then, so not only like before quitting, but then also right after quitting, like what was that period like? And, let's try to take it chronologically for anyone who is, maybe considering making a similar type of jump.
Yeah.
Lay it out and like, here's what to expect, or at least for you, like, here's what happened with me.
Sure. I had been grappling with this decision for some time, knowing that so in 2018, I started a new job. February 2018, I started a new job. And the day to the 1 year anniversary of the day I joined that job was the day I quit.
Whoa.
It wasn't intentional when I joined, obviously. Like, I didn't join a company to have the intention to leave it so soon. But over the course of 2018, which was a very pivotal year for me, I went through a breakup, like a month after I had this new I joined this new company. Basically, like, a lot of transitions happened for me that year. I was in a nearly 3-year relationship, which I knew wasn't very solid, and I was unsure how far along that would go. I moved to a new place in the city in the beginning of that year, and basically in March, April timeframe, I decided that I was going to make some changes in my life because things weren't moving along in the way that I wanted them to. So the relationship dissolved. I found a new roommate, and in May, I ended up going to a music festival, a very small one, where I met an incredible group of people who to this day have been such a strong part of my life and have impacted me in ways that I couldn't even, they've completely changed the course of my life. They were mindful, conscious. They were, they did things that were really pure of heart. And it was just a great conscious community that I ended up joining. And through them, I learned about different, I had a lot of friends before who were very much stuck in the world I was in because I had gone to business school. And this was 4 years past business school. And a lot of my friends were in business school, had these corporate jobs. And so that was the community I was surrounding myself with. And then I found myself in the community of people who were doing things more in the therapeutic world, or were entrepreneurs, or were exploring different ways to sustain themselves. And their personalities resonate with mine quite a bit. And so that was the initial impetus for me to kind of start exploring, what other types of life, could I find myself in?
You got a sneak peek of like a whole new way of living, yeah?
Yeah, and a support system. The support system was key, right? Because if I were to just jump away and like not have the people around me who would understand and would be able to, I could speak to and have support from, then it would have been really difficult. So the first part was having that support system. The second part was really having a strong desire or impetus to do something different. And how that formulated was I had been going to Burning Man. This was going to be my 5th year going to Burning Man. My friends and I decided to build a camp that year. I hadn't done any project that was bigger than helping build a camp. And at this point, we built it like an entire art project, and I was the lead on creating lighting. And I had never done it before. I created an entire beautiful LED dragon that I decided, like, I had to from scratch figure out how to create, how to light up, how to power, all that. And so it was the first real big creative project that I had. Working with my hands, designing things, leading, and logistically coordinating everything at Burning Man, bringing it back. And it just felt so right. That creative outlet that I had, and seeing the faces of people light up when they saw it. And we built a ramen noodle bar made of wood, beautifully designed. People saw it. They sat there. They ate the ramen. It was delicious. They saw the sign. They were so impressed. And it was like, wow, I had the power of creation. I never knew I had it in me. I have the gift of an artist, along with my friends, of course. I mean, we did this all together, but I had a big part in it. And I felt that just lit me up so much in contrast to what I was doing in my corporate life. And so when I came back from Burning Man, I had a conversation with my manager and said, I don't think I'm going to stay here for very much longer. And I could have left that day. And this was in September of 2018. But we had a conversation about it. He was very gracious and very understanding. And we arranged for a transition plan that allowed me to leave on the very first day of my first anniversary.
That's appropriate.
Yeah, exactly. So in the tech world, it helped out a lot because I was able to vest a bit of my stock options, and I was able to fund my bank account with a little more of a buffer. And in the meantime, give myself a little time to figure out what I wanted to do next. So that worked out well. That worked out better than just jumping off and not knowing what to do.
Yeah. So just to replay this for our viewers, so you had this kind of like, spark that lit the match moment when you were like tasked with creating. And if people aren't familiar with Burning Man, it's literally in the desert and you have to build from scratch your structure or whatever you're going to survive out there for a week under. And you built a ramen bar and like this crazy dragon. I saw it. It was awesome. Or at least the newest iteration of it I saw, right? Last year. Yeah. Anyway.
Same iteration.
Oh, same iteration. All right.
We didn't really do too much work to it last year.
You don't have to. It's beautiful. So anyway, so you're tasked with like, creating something from scratch that is meant to be artistic and like a communal space to bring people in, and like that the way you saw people's faces light up, right?
Yeah.
Like and then so doing all that and like that's the reward for you doing so, and putting like using that other hemisphere of your brain rather than your logical,
Right. I didn't know I had a right hemisphere. I didn't know I had a right brain until that point, until that time when I was really, I was forced into it. I wasn't forced into anything. I wasn't forced into that either, but it was something I wanted to do and felt resistance to doing anything of the sort before, but I found myself doing it and found myself just feeling really, really, really grateful and rewarded for doing it. And that was something that creating experiences, I realized creating experiences for joy, for other people's joy, was something that really meant something to me. And, managing customer relationships in the tech world didn't really do it for me. Right. So giving myself space to do something else that allowed myself to create those experiences was something I felt really compelled to do. And when I left the job, finally, I knew that experience of creating joy was something that really resonated with me, but I also felt that I needed to give myself a break. So to answer your original question, what happened afterwards is I left. I immediately got on a plane to Costa Rica. I spent some time with some friends, went to a beautiful festival called Envision Festival, which happens at the end of February. And from there kind of traveled quite a bit throughout Central and South America, just to explore, just to take some time for me. So 2019 was a time for me to explore, discover, and be. And I wanted to give myself that space. And I don't know if I'm jumping too far ahead. You may have a question around this, but my 2020 is about creation. It's about creation of those joyful experiences. And it can be joyful or more for healing, but it's about creation and hustling and making my dreams happen.
That's beautiful. Before diving in, so the next section where I kind of want to like analyze like that path.
Yeah.
But before that, so it sounds like you were able to take time for yourself, and you were able to do so by, actually still utilizing that left hemisphere and planning it out with your manager and, communicating clearly your intent, and your interchanges. And in doing so, like you were able to craft like a smooth transition out. that was then able to support you through this, or at least partially part of that was able to support you through this year of self-discovery.
Yeah.
But cool. I just want to like spell it out for viewers, because it's not always like, yo, just jump. Like, it's like, okay, you can smooth the process. Like, there's a balance that needs to occur, right? Or you can smooth it out if you do balance, the plan with.
Yeah, and I was fortunate to have been able to smooth out my process, and to smooth out the jumping off point for my journey. I don't know that everyone has that luxury.
Oh yeah.
Or liberty, but I would encourage anybody who's listening to this to have a bit of a plan. I personally, I love the idea of living in flow and surrendering. But one gets to do that with some guide rails, and I think the guide rails will help allow for the flow and the unfolding to happen a little more smoothly if you put those guide rails in place. And so for me, I did that by planning out when I was going to leave, and that allowed me to for just practical matters, just allow my rent, my 12-year lease on my apartment to play out. So I didn't have to deal with that. I didn't have to deal with, and then I could figure out like where to store my stuff, and then plan out where I was going to go next, and at least get a little more buffer of income, and so that just helped things, help things along. For me to then have the space. Otherwise, you don't want to have the clutter of practical, requirements of life to impact the journey if one wants to take on a spiritual journey, and go explore and spread their wings. It's better to be unencumbered as much as possible. Yeah. And I'll also say, I wasn't in a relationship at the time. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have car payments. So for me to be able to do this, I don't know how easy it is for others to be able to do this, because life is different for everyone, and everyone's liabilities and debts and obligations are all different. You may have a family situation that wouldn't allow for this to be able to happen, and I'm actually discovering that at the moment, that as an only child to older parents who aren't the most independent in the world, my nomadic lifestyle may soon come to an end as responsibilities start to pile up. And so just sharing that, because there are realities of life, and it's important to honor those responsibilities, because one can say that they're going off and becoming more spiritual, but that actually is represented and reflected in the way one shows up to those important and who depend on them, important to them in their life and who depend on them. And I'm realizing this now with my own family.
That's really important to call out. I think it was like the Dalai Lama who said, once you become enlightened, you still have to do the laundry.
Yeah, and what did Ram Dass say? Ram Dass, bless his soul, rest in peace. He said, if you think you're enlightened, spend 7 days with your family. spend a week with your family.
Amen, man.
Yeah, so that's part of my spiritual journey too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm actually here in San Francisco in between. Gosh, I was in Bali, Thailand, Mexico, and I'm in between Mexico and Costa Rica right now. But a request for help from my dear parents brought me back to San Francisco. Which is why I'm able to come here and do this podcast with you.
Cool. Well, yeah, that's a bit of a blessing in disguise for us. But yeah, and also, yeah, really, really important to highlight that this isn't like a middle finger to the world type thing, right? This is, you're discovering yourself, but it doesn't mean that you need to push everything else away as well, right? There's room for both, it sounds. Or at least there, it sounds like it behooves you to do both.
Absolutely. in the course of my own experiences, and I've done nearly 20 separate ayahuasca ceremonies in the past 2.5 years. And that, along with Burning Man, have been the most transformational experiences of my life, and have changed me and shaped me to where I am now, where I live my life with intention, purpose, meaning, selflessness as much as possible, and love. And showing and expressing that love comes out in many forms. And one of the hardest things for me has been able to express that and show that to my parents. I don't have the closest relationship with them, and they've been, they and I have had a tumultuous past of me not living up to their expectations of a very religious and traditional son.
You're sitting here with a pierced nose and how many things in your wrist?
Very expressed. I've become very expressed with my appearance, and this feels right to me. And only until now have my parents just come to accept it. And yeah. And it better be now. I mean, I'm 35 years old. I'm not gonna I get to be an independent whole person, or at least I hope I do. I tell myself that, but I believe it's because of so many years of rebellion and resentment to them that was expressed before, that has been transmuted through all of the work I've done, all the personal internal work I've done, a lot of which is thanks to plant medicine and the journeys that I've gone on, and a lot of internal downloads and insights and perspective shifts that taught me that the only thing that matters in life is love. You can be as rich as I don't know, Elon Musk, Richard Branson, anybody, and you can have everything in the world, but if you lack love for yourself, if you're not expressive of love to others, if you're not respectful to others, then nothing really matters. Like, you're just gonna feel empty. And so the first people that I found myself needing to love more were my parents. And so I started expressing that more in person, and when we talk on text, I didn't used to say I love you to them. And then I started saying I love you to them. And they started seeing that, and they started knowing that and feeling that and receiving that. And it's just that shift where, I may not be their model son from their expectations, through their upbringing, through their traditions, but I'm there for them. And I think that's important, and it's part of the work. And yeah, I think that's helped them to accept all the different changes that have been going on through my life. Of like, okay, he's not working a normal job anymore. He pierced his nose. He's got long hair. We don't really know who he is or what he's doing, but he loves us, so that's okay.
Well, shout out to them for, coming to terms with that. I have to imagine it's very difficult for, it sounds like very religious and more regimented or rigid types of folks to see this and be like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of it's shared in bits and pieces. I don't get to be completely transparent with them. For reasons of protecting them, and you gotta feed them small bites at first.
Yeah. You got to meet people where they are.
Got to meet people where they are, and some people aren't ready to hear the whole truth, and see the full expression. But I've been very blessed and lucky to feel that I've been able to share as much as I have so far with them.
That's amazing.
And I think that's probably a challenge some people have. A lot of people have, who are on this path and do things that, some people in society, the more conservative people in society, may not necessarily look highly upon.
Yeah, some stuff is very off the wall for that group of people for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't be happier to hear that. You know, that's A, why you're back, and then B, that they're able to come to terms, even if you are maybe spoon feeding them the bits and pieces, which is fair.
It's important to share the truth and speak the truth. Another thing that I've a bit of wisdom that I've come across in my time, because if you hide yourself, then who really do you really know yourself? Or if you're hiding yourself from the world, and so for me, it was always a challenge of like having two different lives: one that I showed my parents and my family, and one that I live outside of that. And I think a lot of people can identify with that, but it's always been, and some people don't, because they're able to be themselves completely to everyone in the world and just live their truth completely. And that's an aspiration I have. And it's something that I've been continually working on, and it feels good. It feels good to not be living an imposter life to some people in society.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think we really hit on like one key point, which is, tell the truth to ideally everybody.
Yeah.
Then one of my favorite philosophers says, it's always better to tell the truth, even though it might cause short-term conflict. In the long term, it's the right move. Because if there's conflict, that means there's something that's unaddressed and needs addressing. And if it's your truth, and this is my own bit now, your own truth is never wrong. If you're really honest with yourself and with those around you, that's why in the long run it'll work out. Is because this is, well, what you are actually experiencing internally, and you underneath all of this, underneath your job and your position in society or whatever, is another part that you hit on, really, really well with your parents, and that you're expressing this to them, is that underneath all this stuff, this outer shell, these masks that you put on, is a core of love. You're just this big ball of love that's looking to be expressed through certain ways. And so it's really important to, I think, come back to that and realize it. And it's so cool to see that as you start expressing that to your parents, they're able to respond in turn, despite their like background and like religion, which is great. Like religion is like really crazy for people who aren't religious. Like that's like your way of life, and they're able to still embrace you with open, loving arms because you showed that to them.
Yeah.
And I think it reminds them of what they really are, and what we're all really doing here is doing our best to love those around us. So that's amazing.
Yeah, it's all a feeling. You want to evoke that feeling of love at all times, and religion can get in the way because it creates boundaries and restrictions that are thought out, that you place judgments on others because of these rules that are that someone decided was the way to live the life. But ultimately, if you're not hurting anyone, if you're not hurting yourself, if you have good intentions, you operate out of love, then you get to be whoever and whatever you want to be. It's something I've realized, and my expression of that for myself, I think, has been received pretty well with others around me. Of course, I have a community of people I surround myself with that believes the same thing, so that helps. But it's also resonating more and more so with people who I felt wouldn't understand so much, particularly my parents. So yeah, there is something to just emanating a feeling of love at all times.
It's powerful, very powerful. And I want to get into that in the next section. We keep skipping ahead, which is totally fine. I'm
Apologies for that.
Oh no, don't be like. I'm glad this is all
probably rambling quite a bit.
That's what this is for. And I think it's all really, at least to me, it's deeply touching stuff that, again, no one's really talking about, right? Everyone's like, how do I get the next thing? Like, what's the next hustle? Like,
Yeah.
How do I become Elon Musk? Like, da, 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 da. While he's out here trying to fill like inner child voids by building Cybertrucks. But anyway, so this is great. We're kind of weaving this theme of, love and open communication. And anyway, but before I move on to like diving real deep into like meaning and that,
Yeah.
I want to like ask you, like, if you were to look back on your life path, like if you had to do it all over again, is there anything you would change? And if so, what is it?
I'm going to give a couple answers. One's the spiritual answer, which is no, I wouldn't change anything because everything is perfect. There's nothing to regret because everything is happening and will happen exactly the way it's supposed to. That's something to ponder and reflect on. One thing that I could think about, like I have thought about, and this is the other answer, which is okay, sure. Let me put on my judging and analytical mind and think about, well, how would I change my life if I could, if I had some opportunities to do so, and considering that I'm interested in really, being more expressive now in different ways, creatively. Maybe I would have done a different major in college. Maybe I would have learned something like psychology or anthropology to understand people better. Or maybe instead of spending over $100,000 in business school, I would have started a company. I would have used that money to start something interesting that, I don't know, maybe opened a restaurant or done something that allowed me to become an entrepreneur at that point. Maybe had I taken the invitation to go to an ayahuasca retreat back in 2010 when I first had that invitation in the East Coast, that would have changed my life. Who knows where I would have been after that, considering how much it's changed my life now. And that was 10 years ago. So I don't know, I could play this game of, it's just mental masturbation, but like, okay, what if, let's play the what if game. But sure, fine. Let's stick with the spiritual answer of no, I wouldn't change a thing. Everything is perfect. I'm here where I am now. I'm having this amazing experience, having this conversation with you. And had anything changed in the past, maybe this wouldn't happen.
A deep answer.
Everything is perfect. There are no coincidences.
Meditate on that, guys. All right. Well, then, in a similar vein, if I gave you a magic wand, what would you change about right now?
Right now?
Your current situation, being home, about to be traveling again. Is there anything that you'd like to change?
No, I mean, again, everything happens for a reason, and the universe works in its ways. And I accept everything that is. I will say my dad's not in the best of health right now. So if I could change that, would love for him to not be suffering as much as he is. And that's the reason why I'm here, to help him with some of the things he's going through. So if I could be here for a better reason, back in San Francisco for a more positive reason, then that's probably what I would change.
I see.
Yeah.
That sounds tough. But we'll send our best wishes and hopes, because I think these things do make a difference at the end of the day. So, well,
yeah, thank you.
Well, moving forward from that, then, it sounds like you've had despite going through some big jumps. You've kept things a little more evened out through planning. But can you tell me about like a moment when you were very afraid? And then as you're thinking of that more broadly, could you tell me how you deal with fear in life in general?
I don't know that I can pinpoint a time when I've been afraid per se. I certainly go through my fair share of stresses and anxieties, even having done a lot of internal work through meditation, yoga practice, plant medicine, going through my own shit. But real life fear, I know, I've come to accept that whatever happens is because of the way I've showed up in my life. I don't feel that I have to fear anything. It's a bit of a attribution to karma. I operate out of love and the goodness of my heart, and I continue to feel and believe that good things will happen to me. I meditate on that every day. So if I believe that, then I have nothing to fear. And I don't even have any fear of death anymore. I wouldn't say that I did before, but I had an experience of complete ego death during a plant medicine experience that that led me to the realization that everything is going to be a beautiful, infinite, blissful experience in this life and the next, and transition. So I don't really have anything to fear. But I will say I do go through my days of feeling like, oh, well, what do I get to prioritize my time on? How do I, what is it for me to create? Like, what is my purpose still? Like, I know high level, my purpose is to create joyful experiences and to create healing experiences and to help others recognize the love that they deserve and to feel that every day and to feel that they are able to feel fully expressed, and to remove the fear and self-limiting beliefs that they have. So that's all high level stuff. What is it that I do to help them do that? And so far it's been through my work with OneHeart, and through other experiences that I have ideas to create. But the way my mind works is, what is it? What do I do? Like, how do I really like make this into my own thing? And that's something I'm still formulating ideas around, and I'm still meditating on what is my path continue to look like. It's still ever evolving. The journey continues. I don't have all the answers. I have a few. I don't have all the answers. And I think anybody who says they have all the answers is probably lying to themselves, or lying to the world in an act of overconfidence.
Yeah. So that's really important to recognize, and that humility, I think, is very admirable, and also really interesting to hear your perspectives on fear and like kind of how that interplays with your life. And maybe we'll leave I know we opened up a big rabbit hole on infinite bliss and afterlife type stuff, and again, in trying to meet our viewers and listeners like where they're at. And I think one other nugget is like the word communication has commune in it, which means to come together over something common. I think I'm going to try to avoid that rabbit hole for now.
Fair.
And maybe in like a follow-up or something, we can go into it for the people who are interested. Well, what I'd like to zoom in on then is, and because this I think is more applicable to everybody, is you mentioned there's still times when you might be like a little anxious or stressed. And,
yeah.
That's kind of what I want to figure out. Like, how do you deal with that? You mentioned you do meditation and yoga, and like how do you work out your stresses, and then what do you think could be applied to everybody to help, process that type of stuff?
Yeah. Um, stillness and connecting with myself. I often find that when I do meditate, which I'm still working on I don't want to say standard, but like a frequent meditation practice. I find that all the stresses and anxieties go away. I mean, there's a reason that meditation is something that many people do now, and you have apps to help you all over the Apple App Store. I'm sure you can find a few. I'm not here to name names, but just connecting with myself and allowing for insights to reach me. When I did my 10-day silent meditation course, I found that I was able to receive a lot of beautiful insights and just feel relinquished of any burdens and any anxieties that I had. So connecting with myself through stillness, connecting with myself through movement. We often find ourselves in our heads during our days, especially if we have the requirements and responsibilities of work, and getting away from that and into our bodies through a practice like yoga or dance. One thing I really enjoy doing is ecstatic dance, which is a practice of going and listening to music and getting into the body on a dance floor without talking. It's about silent movement and complete embodiment of whatever you're feeling. And that allows me to remove any thoughts, which means removing any anxieties from my head, and just like being present to the experience of feeling my body and releasing things, releasing any stresses that may be stuck in the body. It's said that traumas are held in the body, traumas from childhood, and any sort of emotions are stuck in the body too. So if anyone believes that, then one way to release those traumas is to really get in the body, start shaking, start moving, and then you start to feel better.
Yeah.
And I start to feel better. I love music and I love dancing, and so getting out of my head where I'm just stuck in this, the default mode network of processing data and analyzing rational decisions, and just like getting out of that and getting into a place where I'm not using that part of my body, of my brain, allows me to be more free and to be more present and to get into a flow state, which is really just that allows me to remove anxiety and stress. I think it's there's been a lot of research around it, around being in flow state, around being more in touch with the body. I'm going to put in a plug for a really great book called Stealing Fire, which is about getting into flow states through different means and different channels and different techniques. So that's I'd say that's one way. I mean, that's a few ways. I mentioned meditation. Yeah. I mentioned movement, and those are ways for me to kind of just get away.
Yeah. And I'd say I share a lot of those things too, and in particular, like dancing, like letting go to music I love is just. But maybe for people who don't have like the luxury or the time, like even just a beginning meditation practice, 5 minutes at the beginning of your day, 5 minutes at the end, and see where you can take it from there. At least for me and everyone else I'm talking to, including you, seem to say that has a massive effect on, call it, reducing the waves of stress, leveling yourself out a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Do it. Start in the morning, end your day with it. Combine that with a gratitude practice. Think about 5 things you're grateful for before you go to sleep. before or after your nightly meditation. Approaching things with that thought of gratitude. So embodying love and gratitude throughout the day also helps. And it may sound a little difficult and challenging, like what is that? How do I do that? But being appreciative of the small things in life and grateful for it. So that, along with meditation, I think is also quite important.
Awesome. These are great tools for people. Okay. And so switching to the other side of the spectrum, we talked about kind of fear and stress. Can you tell me about, either a moment of great inspiration or, again, broadly, how inspiration shows up in your life?
Very similarly to the way I reduce fear and stress through meditation.
Oh, or it sounds like we're onto something.
Yeah. There's a reason. The greatest, the ascended masters of the world, the Buddha and Ram Dass and whoever you want to point to, spend so much time in silence, going deep within. It's because it is a powerful practice to tap into the great source of knowledge and wisdom and creativity and inspiration that comes from source. And if you're constantly distracted, then you're not connected to that power and you're not connected to the source. So I've gotten so much insight when I'm in meditation, deep meditation. I'll sit in silence and I'll go deep within and then try to remove thought but gently, not like, oh shit, there's a thought, get out of my head, but just like let it come. And actually those thoughts actually might be very meaningful. And I've gotten so much inspiration of like what I get to create and like what I want to do with my immediate short-term time, or like what are like some big projects I want to work on, just through being still with myself and not being inundated with things that I feel like I have to do. So it's a good way to get back into tapping into creativity.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this is great news for everybody because it's the same tool.
And guess what? It's free and anyone can do it. And I'm trying to sell you a product for you to be able to live your dream.
Yeah.
Everyone gets to do this.
Yeah. It's quite the opposite. It's like, just chill, like sit still, look inward and see what you find.
Yeah.
Great news.
Everything you need is within you.
That's huge.
Everything you need is within you.
That's huge.
Don't look externally. It's all within. We just get to remember it. If we put in the time to do that, we will.
And that's really important because it's easy in this world of distractions to not do that. So again, maybe, for functional advice, start small, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and try to hold yourself to that. And then let it build naturally. But, actually doing it, is critical. It's nice to think about, but you got to actually sit still and do it. And it's hard.
It's hard when you fill your days with things.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, oh, okay, meditate. I don't have time to meditate, but
it kind of falls off.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important to create that time.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Prioritize the meditation practice. Yeah.
So that kind of does like the path look back. A couple more sections here. We just want to talk about like kind of like self-building, which it's not, we've talked a lot about, but I want to at least say the questions out so people, because I feel like these are all questions that people are trying to get the answers to. First, so like what key character traits do you attribute to your success? And then diving a little bit more deeply into that, like which came naturally and which do you have to develop?
Well, I think I have a natural hard work ethic and resilience to things that I want, and a drive to overcome obstacles, which I think is really just another way of saying resilience. But getting into business school, for example, that came with a lot of requirements, writing essays and doing a test and all that stuff. And, you know, it's it's a big barrier. It's a big block for people to do it because there's a lot of work involved. For me, that's something I wanted to do. And I found myself overcoming the challenges that are inherent in that. And, you know, there's I guess there's natural intelligence, and there's also like a hard work ethic, and something that I had to work for was developing that work ethic.
So that ethic didn't come naturally.
No, I don't think so. It's something I strove for. It wasn't, and it was actually self-developed. It wasn't like I was forced to do a lot of things by my parents. I didn't have like a tiger mom. I mean, they wanted me to do well in school, but they didn't make me sit in front of a book or play the piano for like 5 hours a day or anything like that. So it was all just kind of like self-developed because I wanted to do things. So when I find something that really resonates with me, I go and do it. What was the second part of your question?
So it was which came naturally and which did you have to develop? And we got a bit into that. And I think also you were naturally moving into the next question, which is how do you discover your strengths, right? And you mentioned something that resonates with you. Like what is that process like?
I think over the course of one's life, one can discover things that they are just naturally good at. And for me, one thing that I feel has been my superpower has been the power of connection and connecting with people, formulating relationships quickly. I feel that I have a very open personality and people connect with me easily. And I find myself surrounded by very interesting people. And I naturally see how their life can be improved or affected positively by other people. And so I naturally form those connections. That's something I developed. That's something I realized and noticed and then developed over time.
And how do you notice this? Like, what's that like? Like, how do you know something like this resonates with me? This calls to me. What's that feeling for people who might?
It's just I feel a sense of joy from doing it. It's not something like I intention, but it happens naturally because I feel a sense of joy and positivity when I do something like that, and I see that people are benefiting from what I'm doing. And so there's a natural reinforcement mechanism because I see that, oh, okay, I did this. People really appreciated it. It's like a gratitude reinforcement. Like I do something and people see it and they express their gratitude, and I'm like, okay, great. That's beautiful. I feel good about it. They feel good about it. I'm going to do more of it. And I was actually just doing that organically anyway, but something I get to cultivate. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. It sounds like there's like a non-forced noticing thing that, so you notice like, hey, doing this thing makes me happy.
Yeah.
And then you also notice it makes other people happy. So it's like an all-win type deal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think like any, and this can apply to any creative outlet, right? If you like to paint or you like to draw or you like to play music, it makes you happy. Like, I hope one isn't doing that because they're forced to do it. Like, you're doing it because you like to do it and it makes you happy. And then ideally other people appreciate the same thing, and they don't have to, right? You can do things for yourself. But for me, what I found resonated with me was doing things that not only made myself happy, but others around me. because I like to spread that happiness. So that's what I do. That's what I like to do. And there's more I get to explore.
That's awesome. And that's huge, because a lot of people say like, well, I have no idea like what I want to do, or, you know, they feel lost or maybe overwhelmed by the near infinite amount of choices in front of them. And it seems like the answer is fairly simple. It's just, what are you naturally pulled towards?
Yeah.
Right. Without forcing it.
What are you naturally good at? What are you naturally pulled towards? And, you know, I can say on the flip side, I'm not a natural teacher, for example. Like I haven't found myself having the skill to, you know, explain concepts to an audience succinctly. And so that's not something I do.
Well, we're giving you a shot at that now.
Yeah, and I hope I'm making some semblance of sense in this interview.
I think you are.
So, but yeah, I think my point is there are things that one's naturally good at, or things that people are naturally good at, and those are things that if they bring you joy, then do more of it. Do more of what makes you happy.
That's a really succinct way of putting it.
Yeah.
And I think we can close that question out with that, and then move to the area that you already naturally moved in, which is on the flip side. Like, how do you learn about any sort of shortcomings or flaws, and then follow up, how do you address them?
I think it's fairly very simple if one's aware of where one falls short, whether it be in work or in relationships, in communication.
Let's start with step one. How do you become aware?
How do you become aware
of shortcomings or flaws?
It could be through indications from others that you interact with. They could share things, and a lot of people are very polite, and they don't want to point out flaws in others. But by noticing where you're, let's say, invited to do more or be more of you versus not, and you're seeing that the reactions from others are maybe not as warm over the course of time because of the way you show up. That could be one way, and it does take some level of consciousness and awareness for someone to realize that. And I know plenty of people who actually are ignorant of that and continue to show up in ways that don't don't support them. So I don't know what the best way to cultivate that awareness is. It just for me, it's sometimes it might take like a very direct, blunt force kind of hit to the head where someone like lashes out. And for me, that happened. And I started to become more aware after an experience where someone was just very, very direct with me about how they didn't see me, showing up in the way they wanted. That was good for them and for the rest of the people. Someone told me I was extremely selfish and just not recognizing of their needs. And so I had a very, we only have our own perspective of ourselves. And we don't know how the people think. Right. And we can have a perspective of how other people perceive us, but it could be completely wrong. So until someone is actually very direct, and it helps to have, I haven't gone to therapy, but I'm sure that's probably a good way to actually have a different perspective on some of the blind sides, that you as a person may have. I have done another form of therapy, which is ayahuasca, which has been called 10 years of therapy in one night. And through that, I've actually been able to realize some of my blind sides, my blind spots, and notice where I haven't shown up for people. And yeah, I mean, without advocating too much for it, I would say that that's been a really, really pivotal experience in my life in order for me to kind of discover how I show up in ways that I could improve.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds, to sum that up, like find out through other people who you care about, you know, what they think. And maybe sometimes it'll come gradually and you might have to notice over time, or, you know, maybe a little boiling point.
Yeah.
And maybe even something like that could be mitigated by just like asking straight up, like
asking for feedback, which I think is powerful and often underutilized.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it might not even need to be so formal of like especially if it's among friends, right? Like hey, could you give me a performance report? Like no, but
yeah, because you get that at work,
right? Yeah,
you work in a corporate setting typically. You have like 360-degree performance feedback evaluations. But yeah, with friends, it can be more difficult to just kind of ask for that direct feedback. But that's powerful.
Yeah.
If you have the type of friends, if you are able to surround yourself with friends who can be that transparent and vulnerable around, that's powerful. And that's how you end up becoming a better version of yourself. And I think part of it is actually like developing that group of friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Having people around you who you get to be vulnerable with and around. And that way, this culture of transparency and feedback for personal improvement just happens gradually and normally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's critical, is, you know, finding that you have like people who will give you that feedback, but with the intent of making things better for the two of you.
Yeah.
Rather than, you know, being toxic about it and saying, I'm just going to tell you the things I don't like about you to put you down.
Yes.
You know, there's a very big difference. And so surrounding yourself with the people who are genuinely loving and caring for you and are telling you this with the intent of, you know, clearing the way to make things better for you two as a unit or group of people, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, building a strong community of people who are heart-centered, and that's just a term I use to kind of have this all-encompassing philosophy of bettering each other is super critical, and that's what I was able to find. So super grateful for that.
That's awesome. So moving forward from that, we kind of talked about, you know, before, like fears and things and any sort of stressors, but, you know, on a personal level, I'd like to know, you know, what's something that you're like struggling with, or, you know, what in your personal life is keeping you up at night right now, and, you know, how are you grappling with that?
It's figuring out what my next year, 2 years looks like in terms of what do I do for money? Where do I live? You know, how do I support myself? To be honest, because I'm still on this journey, and I have different projects that are creating an income for me that isn't the standard steady income that I used to have. And you know, it's part of the discovery process that I have now to create the future that I want to have. But it comes, it's not easy because, you know, I'm not really making anything at the moment. And I want to live in abundance. I think we all have as I'm doing the 21-day Deepak Chopra 20 abundance challenge, we all get to live in abundance, and we're all deserving of that. And it's a constant process and journey of creating that for myself. And I have a lot of ideas, and it's all in the formulation phase.
So that's cool. So because the part of it was like, how are you grappling with it? And you just mentioned a phase called the formulation phase. What does that involve? And then what are the other phases?
It's my formulation phase is figuring out how I spend my time, how to prioritize the different things that I'm interested in, and feeling into what I get to exert more of my energy towards. And then I think after that is the creation and execution phase. It's just go out and do it. And my theme for 2020 is creation. Creation and hustle.
Creation.
I'm still at the tail end of my discovery formulation phase that I intentioned for myself in 2019, and now it's okay, cool. I got to do all that. Now I get to create for myself.
Right.
Yeah. Create that abundance and create the joy and the experiences that I keep telling myself this is what I'm here to do. That's what my purpose is.
That's really good to hear and ties into the next one. So when it comes to creating, at least in my experiences, there can be times when I'm kind of like, maybe feeling down a bit, or I'm looking for excuses to not do the thing I know I'm supposed to do. And I feel like a lot of other people run into this as well. This manifests everywhere. And so what are your techniques for dealing with that and kind of getting out of that funk?
Well, to be honest with you, I struggle with that a lot as well. I struggle with that a lot as well. There have been times during this journey of just like not having the desire to really like get out of bed, or like not knowing what to do with my time during the day, and I think that goes hand in hand with like the journey of discovery. But the way I deal with that is again getting out of my head, feeling more in tune with the energies in my body, because that helps me kind of unblock that stuck energy that may make me feel a bit lazy, or maybe feel distracted, or uninspired or unmotivated. So whether that be yoga or some kind of movement, dance, or exercise, it just gets that stuck energy out of the body moving, so that more creativity can flow in my day.
That's a huge thing to mention. I want to plug one of my good, girlfriends, questions to combat this with was asking yourself, what do my hips have to say about this? Pretend you're Shakira for a minute. Your hips don't lie. What are they talking about down there, right? And I actually got to witness this in action a few times, and it's that type of concept where if you find yourself confused up here, there's a lot going on everywhere else that might have the answers you're looking for. And you touched on a really important concept earlier, which is like your stressors and or traumas and everything can be stored in your body, and like stuff does get stuck there. And if you're not loosening it up, then there it will stay.
Yeah. There will stay.
So I guess just the answer is move.
Breathe and move.
Like novel concepts in this day and age, but like
stillness, breath, and movement. Yeah.
Things we all have access to.
Exactly. It's all things are free. All things that are free.
Cool. So that there's a couple other questions. One other one is like, tell me about a time you took a big risk, but we already went over that, which is
yeah.
You're still in it. So we can go ahead and skip that one. And we're going to move on now on to, we're coming up in the last two sections. This one's on meaning and fulfillment.
Yeah.
And then the last section we'll conclude with is like actionable advice, which we've been kind of interweaving throughout this whole you know, interview so far, but moving on to meaning. Where are you on your journey? We already kind of discussed that, but I just want to throw the question out there. Are we there yet? And do you have a destination in mind?
I'm still in my journey. I'm always on my journey. There's no end to the journey. The journey is lifelong. So wherever I am now, which is discovering my passions and my pursuits and my talents and exploring them and letting things come to me, is part of my journey at the moment. And maybe my journey in 5 years is continuing on building on the foundation that I've created, maybe having a family at that point, but it's still part of the journey. So I wouldn't say that the journey ever ends. And the journey continues until the day I take my last breath. So it's always a journey. I treat life as a journey. There's no pinnacle, you know, like there's a powerful quote that says, the journey is the destination, or the destination is the journey. I forget. Maybe I'm like saying it incorrectly, but
sure.
But one gets it, you know. Appreciate this constant flow and journey you're on. If you think about a destination, you get attached to that, and then what happens when you get there, or you don't get there? So I treat every day as a journey and just an open space for me from which to create. There was a second part to your question.
You know, you've answered it. It was, you know, whether you have a destination in mind. And yeah, then the follow-up to that would be is, you know, do you always feel like you're on the right path?
So just to go back to the first question, the destination in mind is to create, to be part of this co-creation in the world that allows this beautiful, you know, world we live in to live with more happiness and peace, and with less suffering. And we have a lot of issues happening in the world these days, whether through global warming or fires and devastations, and people acting out of integrity and acting with a lot of ego, which disallows them or prevents them from really treating each other with love, which is probably the biggest reason why we are in this predicament in the first place with what's happening in the world. All the natural disasters and things, greed, etc. Yeah. So the destination is really about helping the rest of the world recognize what's really important, which is that love, which is the only currency that matters in the universe. And once you operate with that type of love and appreciation, you treat others with respect, and you treat Mother Nature with respect, and you treat the earth with respect, and we're going to start to see some really meaningful changes. So, so the end destination for me isn't like a you know, concept of a company I'm going to start to solve world problems. I mean, there could be that, but that's just, you know, the high level is to create more love in the world. Sorry, the second question again.
All good.
Yeah.
The other one is, you know, do you always feel like you're on the right path?
Okay. Do I always feel like I'm on the right path? For the most part, I do. For the most part, I find myself surrounded by people who who inspire me, and who also tell me, who provide the positive reinforcement and positive feedback that what I'm doing is beautiful, and who I am is beautiful. You know, part of like my essence is is someone who just is, by way of being, like a spreader of light, and I get that positive reinforcement from others. I feel that way sometimes. I don't feel that way at other times, and even when I don't feel that way, I get that reflection. So yeah, I feel like I'm on the right path.
It's part of the path.
It's part of the path. It's part of the journey. So I'm, there's some when I get to be aware of it, and people reflect that, then yeah, okay, cool. I get to tell myself that I'm still doing the right thing. I'm still on the right path.
Mm-hmm. That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
Especially considering like we are, the whole point of this podcast, right, is, to kind of guide lost souls and, explain to them like, all right, even if you are feeling a bit maybe lost, that's still part of the journey as well. And I think it's ultimately empowering to hear that, especially from someone like you who is like way off the grid, relative to normal societal things, right? Is that, this is normal, even though you're doing something that's really far on the one end of the spectrum. Like, it's normal to feel like maybe a bit like lost or off the path, and understanding that actually is itself part of the journey as well. And, giving you this broader, higher level perspective of the journey might, will hopefully help people who are in a similar position, and even though when you're in it, it might be difficult to hold that perspective.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The ultimate message I'd like to convey is it's okay. It's okay to feel like you're lost. It's okay to feel like you're not sure of like what's next or what's happening. But there's an inherent trust that I hold in the universe providing and showing the way. And it may not be clear at the moment. But as I continue to operate out of integrity and operate out of love and operate out of this just general philosophy of wanting to create more goodness and joy and healing and love in the world, then the path will light itself for me. So it's okay to just feel like, okay, no, I don't know what's happening. Should I just go back and like live that normal life again? Like get myself a job, a 9 to 5. Security, a nice apartment in San Francisco. Like, no, I don't know. No, that's not. It's nice, great, but there's also more for me.
That's really good to hear.
And I'm trusting, and that's the best I can do.
Okay, that's great. So that actually, I love how you mentioned there's a framework there to trust that despite maybe a current feeling of being lost, that something, greater is around the corner by operating out of this love, integrity, and doing your best to spread love and happiness to those around you.
Yeah, and again, like I mentioned a book that really inspired me in the past to be where I am now, and it's called The Surrender Experiment. So it's about it's surrendering to the universe and surrendering to this the trust that I have because I operate out of love. Might sound a little woo woo.
It definitely does.
I will happily report back in the future how that all works out for me. But so far I've had a lot of beautiful things happen to me, and that I've gotten inspiration to create. So as long as that is in my field, is in my view, then that's the way I'm going to continue this.
Amazing. Then conversely now, so we talked about feeling lost.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, when do you feel most found? Like now we're getting really into it. Like, what makes you feel fulfilled?
It's when I feel like I make a difference in other people's lives. Yeah. So the first thing was when I created that experience at Burning Man and felt that, saw the faces light up from people and heard the words of appreciation and gratitude for what I and my friends created. And that really lit me up. and that told me that that was something that I got to spend more of my time and energy doing in my life. And then now, as in my role as a journey director, the journey director for OneHeart Journeys, where we create week-long transformational experiences, and seeing people's lives transform as a result of the experiences we create and container we've created for people to like really dive in, that lights me up too. And so the any type of work or experience where I see, and even small things, like I've been going to parties in Bali and painting people's faces, and just creating art on their bodies, and they get really excited and they get really happy seeing that. And so it's like that what I was missing in my corporate world life was the human interaction of people feeling of being like evoking positive emotion from my interaction with them. And that's what I get to feel now, and that's what I continually hope to achieve through anything that I do.
That's a great target. And yeah, that's more of what, well, that's partially why we're doing the podcast. It's because I was like, this is where it's at. It's helping other people. And that dovetails perfectly into the next question.
Cool.
So
I meant to do that. No coincidences.
Everybody, we are interviewing a Jedi. He said it first. So the next one is, I want to talk about intention, which we've brought up a bunch of times. I ran across an interesting framework in another cool book called The Law of One, which you may have heard of. And it's balance. It's kind of talking about, are you serving yourself or are you serving others? Is that, as the kind of like two polarities of intention, the baseline things. Is this for me or is this for someone else? Like, why am I doing this thing? And so what I want to ask you is, how do you balance the two of them? And then also, which is more rewarding?
Serving others, 100%. And I think by virtue of serving others, I'm serving myself. So any work that I do, volunteer work or what have you, where others benefit from my energy, is also serving me, because I feel a sense of like I just feel good about it. It's why people do volunteer service. It's why people offer their time. So if more people in the world served others, then we'd have a far better world than we currently live in. Serving myself only helps, just by like looking at the numbers. Let's just get back into facts for a second. If I'm serving myself, I'm helping one person. If I'm serving others, there are more people to help. And there are benefits to serving others that may be intangible to me, but it's at the end of the day, that's what creates more love in the world. Thinking of others and being and recognizing that we're all connected. So serving others means I'm serving myself.
These are deep concepts to reckon with for people who might not be thinking about it, but I just want to bring up an interesting concept I think they might be more familiar with, which is like, have you heard that you're the average of your 5 closest friends, right? And you can tell if you pay a real close attention that they rub off on you and you rub off on them. And, maybe it starts with like ways of speaking, or you come up with a new word or an inside joke, but your ways of thinking and acting tend to start converging a bit, right? And, that same effect applies across everybody you interact with, right? That's not unique just to your friends. That's with everybody. There's a connection there. And some might be more close in proximity than others, but it's certainly real. And it's something that, again, we don't really talk about, that I think is really important for people to come to terms with, is that you're influenced by the people closest to you and you have an influence back on them. And this radiates out everywhere. So then the question is like, okay, well, how do I want to, knowing this, right? How do I want to approach this? Do I want to approach this with what can I get out of the situation? How can I manipulate this person into doing something that I want for me? Or is it, how can I, help them out? Or, serve whatever, maybe they have something that they need. And like, how can I facilitate that? And another interesting, and that's on the far ends of the spectrum, but I also think there might be room for balance in the middle. Cause like, if you're, working yourself to the bone, serving others, say volunteering in like, an impoverished area, and you're not taking care of yourself, well then suddenly you can't serve others better, right? If you're not getting enough sleep or you're not, keeping up with your practices to reduce stress, right? There's like a balance that needs to occur, I think.
That's a very fair point. Yeah, the way I articulated my answer made it seem that serving myself isn't important at all, but that was it's important to understand the distinction between serving oneself for meaningful gain at the expense of others and serving oneself so that one can serve others better.
Yeah.
So there's I really appreciate the concept of self-care. And serving myself in the spirit of self-care, getting enough sleep, feeding my body and nourishing it with high quality foods, not doing things that don't serve me. Like I actually quit alcohol a few years back. Things like that, which raise, I'm going to go woo-woo again, but raise my vibration.
We can go a little woo.
And frequency, so that I'm operating, I get to operate with a clear mind, clear head, to be able to operate best out of service and out of love, helps me to serve others better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the intention is to love myself in order to love others.
Yeah.
Or serve myself in order to serve others. The main crux of it being that service to others is actually what really is hugely important. But you can't do it if you give up everything for yourself. So you got to fill your cup first.
Yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
That's huge, and that's really important to know. Is that you gotta, there's a baseline that needs to occur with you, but like what seems to really make you light up is making other people light up.
Yes.
And then I also want to dive in a little bit to the woo and so you mentioned this concept of raising your frequency, and I found a way of thinking about it from I have a technical-ish background and upbringing, born and raised in Silicon Valley, and I want to explain what raising your vibration is a little bit, or at least my understanding of it is that as we operate, we pay attention to things so many times a second. We have, it's kind of like a screen has a frame rate or refresh rate. There's 60 times a second, I might be able to look at something. But if you raise that up, if you raise it to 100 times a second, 120 times a second, now you can gain a much more in-depth understanding of what's going on around you. And so that's actually what meditation is trying to do. It's like teaching you how to pay more attention to what's going on around you and really experience the true richness of life rather than maybe getting distracted or even lowering your ability, raising your natural filters to things. This is allowing you to take more in. And then, that's the intake part of it. And then you mentioned the output part, which is, okay, well then, what do I do with all this input you got to output stuff as well. And that's the service to others portion and coming from a place of love and integrity as you do so.
Yeah.
So these are all really important concepts. And again, other things that aren't really being talked about, and that's why they're called woo, is because this is kind of a new space for people to experience. And I want to just explain, this stuff is actually very real, in terms of the human ability to consciously pay attention to something only a certain amount of times a second. I made up 60, but like it could be that. And you can raise that through meditation. This has been scientifically proven. They've got like brain scans of monks, and they light up in entirely different areas and much more broadly than like people who don't. And this does produce, I would say, if you're operating from a place of love and integrity, better experiences for you and everyone around you, the more you can do it. It's like, how many times a second can I be loving, right? That's a cool way of doing it, right? Like a little self-challenge, right? Can I be more loving per second than I was yesterday, right? And keep that going. And just see where it takes you. Like it's certainly, made my life, and it sounds like yours, like blow up in leaps and bounds in terms of like personal relationship abundance, as well as other areas. So
I like that concept of loving per second, or loves per second. Like I think of like like I used to play video games a lot, like FPS, frames per second. I'm like, okay, cool, I get that, that metric. And loved per second, loves per second. Okay, yeah, let's increase that rate.
Yep. There you go.
Whatever that looks like, let's do it.
There you go.
Yeah, more smiles, more hugs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Smiles per gallon, baby. So anyway, just wanted to take a quick detour for that.
Yeah. That's a really well articulated way of expressing that concept.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been on my mind for a while, and I hope this serves other people in their lives as well.
I'm sure it will.
That's why I'm offering it. So yeah, then we're approaching our last section, and but first I want to talk, or like finally to close out, like the meaning section is, what motivates you and gets you out of bed every morning, especially understanding that you mentioned you had troubles getting out of bed sometimes.
What gets me out of bed is knowing that I have the power within me to create and to learn and to create. And right now I'm doing so much, just harnessing that ability, just harnessing that desire to create beauty in the world. I'm learning to play instruments and to create music, and devising ways, not devising ways, that sounds kind of like weird, but sort of thinking of different experiences that will ultimately lead to this outcome of people feeling really good, people feeling good about themselves, and people learning, and people feeling joy. So there's so much out there that I get to create and co-create with the amazing high vibrational community of people that I have around me. And every day is a new day for me to think of something new to do. So outside of the different pursuits I'm doing right now, which is in clothing and like sustainable fashion and music and retreats, there are other things that through just the conversations and me being me, I'll the opportunities are endless, right? Like I used to think I was stuck in a box of, I studied finance, and so I'm gonna work at a bank and do finance and do financy things and run numbers. Like I don't have any skills to do anything outside of that. But now I have the free space to do that, which comes with its own set of challenges, because it's like, okay, what the hell do I do? And how do I, it's actually kind of nice to have like some framework or, like barriers to kind of like fill my time with. But it is beautiful because there's like, it feels to me that my community, like the people I surround myself with are all on a very similar journey, and we're all figuring out together. And when that happens, there's a boundless opportunity to create something new, to create something beautiful, all for the same general purpose of like, how do we make this world a better place and
Mm.
create more joy and love and healing out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that gets me out of bed, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously. And like, I also want to like try to bring this home for someone who might not have that same type of community, and just remind them that, the things we're discussing are entirely accessible within yourself, and you can do, and it will be harder, and not saying it's going to be easy. In fact, this stuff is much more easily said than done. Like, let's just
Certainly.
make that super duper clear for everybody.
Certainly.
But you do have this internal capacity to love, and to, with our new metric, loves per second. Just try raising that vibration, that frequency of loving per second or per minute. Start where you are, right? To those around you, and just see what happens. And again, that's accessible to anybody. And understanding that your situation might be difficult, but if you want to look at it from a rational perspective, like, it's probably your best option. It's either that or hates per second or something else, right? Jealousy per second, or
Yeah.
So
And it goes hand in hand with the concept of serving others. And so I mentioned before a couple of the really most transformational experiences that I had in my life that have shaped the way I've moved in the world have been ayahuasca ceremonies in Burning Man. And with Burning Man, the concept of gifting is one of the 10 principles.
Mm-hmm.
For those unfamiliar with Burning Man and how it operates, there's no traditional economy there where you exchange money as a form of energy in exchange for a good that you desire, nor is it through bartering where you trade items of equal value for each other. You come with abundance and you gift away, and what you receive in return is priceless in terms of the appreciation, the energy, the smiles, the feeling. You can't put a price on that. And so that's how that's, I think, one way that I have operated in the past year or two, with finding ways to create more happiness and joy through just offering things for free, and seeing how that comes back in return. And that's one practical way of increasing your loves per second.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I want to
be as easy as a smile or a compliment. It doesn't have to be anything physical in nature.
Yes, and that's exactly what I wanted to circle back on, because Burning Man is a pretty exclusive-ish experience, and not everyone has the means to do that, or and a lot of people critical of it would say, well, Burning Man is just a bunch of rich people in the desert, and they already had all the material abundance they needed before coming, and that's why they can give it away. Well, I think it's important to call out, as you just mentioned, that the abundance we're talking about here is not necessarily material. This is on a deeper emotional level of abundance that is available to all of us. And in fact, I think we're made of this huge ball of love that's sitting in your chest.
Yeah.
And just expressing that more often will lead to, both material and, emotional changes around you. So again, if you don't have access to that, Burning Man or whatever, right, or anything physical, keep in mind, this isn't exactly what we're talking about here. It's just the concept of giving freely. And that reminds me of like another good quote. It's like, from one candle, you can light thousands of others. And that's kind of how it works internally as well. So that closes out our meaning fulfillment section. We're nearing the end. This is the last bit.
Very well structured.
Which is, I tried to make this make sense. So we're going to get into some actionable advice. I think we've been weaving this throughout.
I think we've thrown out a lot of actionable advice.
Tons.
Actionable advice in there. Yeah.
Tons. But I have a few specific questions, which I think will be very relevant to the listener base.
Okay.
So the first of the one is like, how do you approach work-life balance? And I know you're not really working or traditionally working, but like, making time for, how do you partition your time? How
Yeah,
about
that's really interesting. Considering when I was working a traditional job, I had a very intentional approach about work-life balance and made time for exercise in the morning or after work and didn't over commit myself to the work. And now that I haven't been working a traditional job, I am working more of a digital nomad type lifestyle, but feeling that I've got, because it's the more of the impetus is on me to create, to create that income or any sort of financial abundance. I feel that it's actually a little more difficult for me to have a balance because I feel more of a responsibility and guilt if I'm not doing something to create for myself. So I actually struggle with it more in terms of not creating time in my life to, let's say, do some self-care stuff, like sleep more or like do yoga or exercise. So it's always a work. It's a work in progress. The easy answer for me to say is to just, to prioritize the things that will allow me to have more energy to do the things that I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Am I doing that right now? Not as well as I'd like. Not as well as I'd like. Yeah. But I was never the person, I'll say, in my life, I always valued work-life balance. I wasn't the work my ass off in the expectations of a, like huge payoff or in basically to in lieu of having a more balanced life of experiences. I was always one taking a lot of vacation. I was always one taking like going home when I could and seeing friends and having the experiences when I was young instead of busting my ass so that I'd have all the money in the world to have those experiences when I was older. Mm-hmm. So I'm very much a proponent of work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think it prolongs life.
Yeah. I'm with you on that, man.
Yeah.
And that kind of ties into the next one, which is, how do you make time for those you care about?
You just do. You just do. I'm doing it now.
True.
I'm doing it now. That's the reason I'm in San Francisco having this conversation with you. I made the time. For a bit of context, I was in Tulum, Mexico. I had just run a week-long retreat, and then I spent some time resting with you and some other friends in Isla Mujeres in Mexico, and I was in Tulum for 2 weeks, and my plan was to kind of continue to travel around Central America. But then I got a call from my parents who needed some help, so I'm 6 hours away and a few $100 of a flight difference away, and it wasn't part of my plan, but I made the time. Now I'm here. Mm-hmm. So I had to derail some plans, and this is part and parcel of the concept we just talked about, which is being in service to others and not myself. So I could have been like, no, like I'm going to do my thing that doesn't make sense for me and be selfish and focus on myself, or I could be more selfless and serve others who are in need and who deserve to receive love, and decided to follow that.
Beautiful. Okay, we're going to switch gears slightly.
Okay.
And get into a bunch of things you alluded to before, which is, so politics aside, what alternative viewpoints do you hold? And if that's like too touchy of a thing, like we could ignore it, but it sounds to me, I know you pretty well. This is your time to plug any sort of woo.
Um, I'm going to plug the two things that I found the most impactful to me in my life, which is Burning Man and ayahuasca. Not that Burning Man's a viewpoint, but open-mindedness. I encourage any and all forms of free expression and open-mindedness and creativity. And I found that that has been a really pivotal experience in my life in terms of getting out of the normal confines of society and really feeling free, really feeling like the inner child in me gets to play. Really expressing myself as unbounded as possible. And along with that, there have been experiences that have opened me up. So there's non-traditional ways of relating to people, open relationships that I think is becoming more of a common thing these days, where, the idea of loving more than one person, I mean, that's more of polyamory, but like just being open to connecting with people outside of a traditional one-to-one male-female relationship is, I think, has a lot of benefits. It can be very challenging, but part of that can be really rewarding in terms of creating a dynamic of vulnerable, open, transparent communication. So there are a lot of, ancillary benefits to something like that, which can be very triggering or jarring to some. And so, yeah, I mean, opening up, just exploring other ways of discovering life outside of what, like the societal conditioning or familial conditioning has taught us. And one other thing, psychedelics. Psychedelics opens ourselves up to a whole new world of possibility. It quiets the default mode network, the rational mind, the logical mind. It creates more neural pathways for creativity, for us to be able to rewire our brains to believe different things, to believe in the world of possibility, to understand where we come from, and to recognize what is the most important thing in the world, which I've alluded to a few times, which is love.
I also want to caveat that with responsible psychedelic usage.
Thank you for that.
And I also want to, and if you want more information on that, there's plenty of research online, setting, so on.
Yeah, of course. I highly recommend reading Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind.
Seconded. That's huge. That book is amazing.
Who is, I think, has done a really great service to society in terms of being a well-respected author to start with, and who isn't, someone who calls himself a psychonaut or does things irresponsibly, and has been able to communicate the benefits, but also in a very real way of what kind of really powerful experiences responsible psychedelic use can result in people, and how it can heal trauma, and how it could be therapeutic, and how it can really start to change people for the better.
Yeah.
And I'm going to plug OneHeart Journeys as part of this, which is the organization I have been part of for the past year. That's been really powerful, and I've seen, and part of the reason I continue to be part of this organization, which has really been meaningful in my life, is because I get to see the transformation that happens in people after they go through a transformational life experience. Sitting with an ancient modality, a plant medicine that has the power to really heal the world.
That's great. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to dismiss that. That is awesome. I'm fully behind this, as you're aware. We have accidentally skipped to the last question.
Oops.
So, remember, guys, I'm sitting with a Jedi.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I got to where I am because I like to look ahead.
Yeah, do no psychedelics and you could read minds. You've heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
Totally kidding. Again, please responsibly use Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. That's a guy who really meets people where they are. He is an incredible communicator. Used to write about, the economy and farming and food.
Yeah.
And then he
The
went off.
Omnivore's Dilemma, amazing book.
Mm-hmm.
Has a series on Netflix called Cooked. Just really passionate person about everything he does, and now it's been psychedelics.
Yeah. And so moving on from alternative viewpoints, we've got 3 more questions that we already kind of did the last one.
Okay.
So I want to go off a little bit more in the challenging end now and ask yourself, how do you challenge your own beliefs and develop new perspectives?
By constantly being curious, by asking questions all the time, by consuming information as much as possible that isn't always consistent with the things that I've been not conditioned or led to believe, but what I've desired, or what has been shared with me. So I don't always seek it out, but when I encounter a different viewpoint, I'm not one to dismiss it.
Mm.
I always consider it, and in the world that we live in these days, I'll never profess to know everything, right? Or whatever information that I hold is I'll never profess that to be the truth, because I firmly believe, and I think this comes from a program. I'm not going to say which one, but there's information out there. There's knowledge, information that falls into 3 buckets. There's information there's information you don't know, and there's information you don't know. And that 3rd bucket is probably the biggest
Mm-hmm.
of all of the 3 buckets. And so I'm always open to accepting different viewpoints, because there's certainly things that I know that I don't know.
Mm. So yeah, it sounds like
that I don't know that I don't know.
Yeah. I think I've seen that represented as nested circles before.
Yeah.
And it's like the things are like the size of your fingertip, and the things you don't know are like this.
Yeah.
And then everything else is like the rest of the room.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Or like the rest of the world. But yeah, so it's just if I were to summarize it, it sounds.
I think
like
you actually shared with me like a really fascinating map of the concepts and theories and ideas out there in the world that I had no idea about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
So that's a very go ahead.
Yeah, but anyway, sorry, I don't want to dive into our stuff for our viewers' sake. I wanted to summarize this actually real quick.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there's a few aspects here. There's one, understanding that you don't know everything. No one does.
Yeah.
So this humility, right? 2, openness to new things that are coming your way, new ideas. And then 3, which I'm kind of plugging in here, it sounds like discernment needs to occur, which is like, okay, do these reconcile with my past beliefs? Like, who is telling me this? Like, do their intentions seem good? Do they seem to know what they're talking about? Right? Like, is this true?
Yeah.
Right. And then working that in. So there's a framework for people. And all right, cool. So that's the hard part. Now we'll get on to like a couple. Well, here's like another one. This is again for the benefit of our viewers. What advice would you like to offer anyone who's like younger, maybe just beginning their careers or paths, or even like what would you tell your younger self as you're about to come out into the world and do things as an independent person?
Follow your greatest joy.
Hmm.
Follow your greatest joy. Don't you can do the things that your parents or society tells you to do. You know, get that job. You know, do the things that are practical, but do so if you are able to also make time for yourself to follow your greatest joys, and whether that's it's singing or creating art or whatever it may be. Make time for that. Make time for that in your life. And maybe it's not right. Maybe it's not the right time to like jump, fully into whatever that is, because you still have to pay the bills. You still have to, to balance that root chakra. But yeah, like make time to find the things that light you up. And over time that will reap great dividends. Yeah, don't live your life, don't live someone else's life. Don't live a life of misery because someone expects you to do something or told you to do something. You can honor that, but also honor yourself.
Mm-hmm. Powerful advice. Powerful advice. Okay. And then finally, this is the official place to bring awareness to any causes or projects. Anything you'd like our viewers to be, aware of, which it sounds like you've already plugged OneHeart Journeys.
Yeah.
And, maybe is there anything else?
There are a lot.
Let's go with like top two.
Top two.
Top two.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I've already spoken a lot about OneHeart Journeys. Really changed my life. Amazing people, created a beautiful, amazing tribe of 150 to right at the moment growing global people of different ages who have come together to find more of themselves and discover what really is the guiding force that helps them understand how to live their life with intention, motivation, and purpose. Check it out. That's all I'll say. There's more you can do if you're interested.
Do you have a website?
OneHeart with a one, number one, heart.com.
And are there any other ways for them to connect? Is that the best way?
That's the best way to gain a high level understanding. I can be reached at Salman, SALMAN, at oneheart.com through email. So I'll leave it to that. I'll leave that there for my plug for OneHeart Journeys. Week-long ayahuasca journeys with other modalities, integration program in amazing places like Costa Rica and Mexico. Apart from that, I think there are a lot of other resources. I'll plug Vipassana too. It's been powerful. I'll plug a couple causes. Vipassana and ecstatic dance. Two things that are probably much more accessible and lower cost than a week-long retreat in a beautiful Central American country. Vipassana, if one can take 10 days, is a powerful way to really get in the habit of meditation with a very powerful technique to reduce suffering, and it's free. It's actually donation based. So when you go, you don't actually pay a thing. You find your way there. You have lodging and food already covered for you. And at the very end, if you feel like you've got something out of it, if it was a powerful experience for you, then you have the opportunity to donate back. And so it's again, it's all in the spirit of service to others. And everyone who works there, who provides this program for you, is a volunteer. So really beautiful experience. And then just because I love getting in the flow of dance, ecstatic dance, which is available in many cities globally. Any major city, you're able to find it. Google it, ecstatic dance. But it's a beautiful way to like get out of the head into the body, and dance out all of the stresses and anxieties that may reside in the body, and just connect. And you were able to find, at least for myself, I've found a beautiful community of people who go to these events. And if you're struggling to find people who I've described resonate with me, maybe resonate with you if you're listening, that's a good way to find out. I'll share one anecdote. We had someone on one of our OneHeart journeys who was from St. Petersburg, Russia, and she had such a transformational experience through our retreat, but was afraid to go back and find that there wasn't going to be anybody who understood her after her spiritual awakening. And we encouraged her to go to ecstatic dance, and that existed in St. Petersburg. And that's the type of event where you would find the type of community who gets it.
Wow. So that's truly to the corners of the globe. St. Petersburg, Russia.
Yeah, right? St. Petersburg, Russia.
Jesus.
Second largest city in Russia.
Well, so these are amazing causes. I for one can attest to ecstatic dance's awesomeness. It's everything you just said. Big endorsement from me. Also OneHeart Journeys, knowing you, and Tim, like, please check that out if that's something that you're interested in. And then Vipassanas I haven't done, but to re-summarize, that's a 10-day silent retreat focused on meditation, and it seems like a great way to kickstart your way into it. And all amazing things. I think everything you talked about here, well, I hope everything that you talked about here will resonate with our listeners and viewers, and that they really take the time to dig into a lot of what you said, because I think it's really deep stuff that you're bringing up. And again, this is trying to address the problem that we're all wrestling with, which is like, what the hell am I doing here? And like, where do I find fulfillment and meaning? And like, these are some really unexpected, or I should say rarely talked about techniques that anyone and everyone can do to begin coming at this great challenge of life.
Yeah, I think it really can be a lonely road to find purpose and meaning, and community really helps. And I will say that part of my intention for what I want to create in the future revolves around creation or creativity, community, and co-creation. Creativity, co-creation, and community, which is just, don't go at it alone. Find other people who are like you. To bounce ideas and feel supported. And that's a lot of the things I just mentioned have that part of it.
And to piggyback off that community stuff, use our Facebook page, Reach and Reflect. And you can also reach us directly at reachandreflect@gmail.com. And, it's still a work in progress, but we're going to do our best to kind of foster community at that level as well. Oh, we also have a subreddit. So check that out.
Wow, already.
Well, it's all being spun up, all with the idea of developing this community, even if it's not necessarily in person, where we can have discussions around these episodes, the concepts that we talked about, and really get everybody to come together for what feels like a greater purpose of helping each other reach their highest calling.
Yeah.
And with that, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a true pleasure. And we'll do a follow-up for sure, because I'm really interested to see where your story goes next.
Beautiful. Thank you, Derek. And if anybody wants to connect with me, I also forgot to share, I have an Instagram, which is at the.Shalman, SHALMAN, where you get to follow all the things I'm doing in my life, my world travels, and anything more. So Thank you, Derek, for having me on this. It's been a pleasure. It's actually my first podcast I've ever done. I, in the spirit of sharing my truth and sharing my story, and being more vulnerable and transparent with the world, this is a beautiful way for me to honor that. So thank you for the opportunity.
Well, you're very welcome.
Yeah.